doing business in Africa. You can't afford to be without Africa Investor.
Very much, Ashley, and on behalf of Africa Investor and Africa PLC, our trade tech and blockchain, trade finance and logistics platform, a very warm welcome to the first Africa Investor RegTech Investors Consultative Summit. As Ashley indicated, my name is Hubert Danso, and I am the CEO and Chairman of Africa Investor, and as I mentioned, Africa PLC, our e-trade and RegTech platform, as well as the African Union's Continental Business Network. And I will be chairing the proceedings for today's consultative summit. I think, as you may have read from the intro information, this event builds on the recent African e-trade leaders consultative summit that I convened and chaired with the Secretary Generals of the International Chamber of Commerce, Bern Union, the African Continental Free Trade Area Secretariat, the World Customs Organization, and the World Trade Organization. And our main focus there was to really look at the role of organized business and the private sector to bring digital and e-trade related solutions in support of the African Continental Free Trade Area that's being championed and driven by our esteemed heads of state. And as a consequence of the outcome of that useful and far-reaching discussion, the African Union have requested us to host this particular follow-up RegTech Investors Consultative Summit, because a number of the issues that actually came out of that first discussion, it really pointed to how can technology intermediate a lot of the operational and the administrative issues associated with ensuring that the African Continental Free Trade Area can benefit from the likes of the, tech. So I think, as you know, more generally across the actual sector, we've seen sort of a year-on-year increase of about 103% of investment into, and this is just in the last 3 quarters of 2019, that rise of investment into RegTech, which has made it one of the fastest, growing tech categories for global investors. So it's obvious and very clear to all of us, I'm sure, that the $3.2 trillion African Continental Free Trade Area could do well to benefit from some of this innovation and capital. So our objectives for today are essentially threefold. First of all, it's to consult all of you as the RegTech community and RegTech investors to assist us and our African Union heads of state and e-trade negotiators and stakeholders really provide input to assist with the negotiations of the e-commerce and the e-trade protocols that will be annexed to the African Continental Free Trade Area. The second is to feed into our policy position as the Continental Business Network and the African private sector that's currently being drafted and finalized as we speak, for which will be part of that same process fed into the African Union Development Agency and the African Continental Free Trade Area process and secretariat. And then the third and final key objective is really to look at areas of support for the Africa PLC e-trade platform, where we can bring and pilot new innovative RegTech related solutions as a go-to-market transactional and knowledge exchange platform that is in line with our mission. And our mission is really how to globalize African e-trade in support of the African Continental Free Trade Area. We will also run a few polls throughout the session. I think, as you would have seen from the program, this session is going to be broken up into 2 segments. The first one is really going to be looking at setting the scene and setting the stage for RegTech in Africa, and that's really going to be delving a bit more into identifying the trends, the challenges, ideally the opportunities, and the need that's really driving the interest in RegTech solutions more generally. And then in the second panel, we're really going to be talking a lot more about the sort of go-to-market opportunities, what investors are really doing. We're seeing some good examples of what's been invested in, and hopefully we'll come away with some very practical and specific examples of what we can invest in now, what we can review as a RegTech investment-related opportunity for the continent. But before we jump into the issues and into the first panel, I'm going to call on my good colleague and partner here, Ashley, just to run a bit of a poll for us here, which will be the first poll. And here we're really looking to get your initial perspectives on the impact of COVID-19 and the extent to which you believe that as a consequence of the increased digitalization, whether our negotiators should potentially accelerate the negotiation on e-trade and e-commerce that is currently scheduled for 2020, whether that should be accelerated to 2021. You should see the poll in front of you. It's a yes or a no answer. I'm not meaning to influence anyone, but I'm clicking yes. And I have just sent it through. Please do the same. And as and when the poll comes up, I'll be advised by my good colleague Ashley what the outcome and the results of that poll are. But I think let's proceed while the technology does what technology does. So as I mentioned, we are starting with the panel number one, which is setting the stage for RegTech opportunities in Africa. And as I mentioned, I'm joined by the leaders in this field. So, you know, we have 5 speakers that will be addressing these issues with us in this first panel, which will run for between 50 minutes to 1 hour. And our first esteemed panelist is Alistair Tempest, who is the CEO of the E-Commerce Forum of Africa. We have Devraj Basu, who is the Senior Lecturer in Finance at Strathclyde Business School. We have Mark Henderson, who is the founding partner at Agile Process Innovation. We have Michelle Chivungu, who is the founder and CEO and investor of the Global Policy House in the UK. And we have, last but by no means least, Paul Smith, who is the former president and CEO of the CFA Institute. So with that, and in the interest of time, we're about to bring this first scene-setting panel to a close. But I just urge all of our panelists and viewers to think about one thing. We are convening this at the request of political leaders and because we have an interest. So as we look at this in the context of the African Continental Free Trade Area, I always lament that I spoke at a recent regional conference for the International Chamber of Commerce with all of the chambers and the business leaders from across the continent. And I always encouraged the SME community and the business community not to be asking people like me or others or politicians about the prospects for success of the African Continental Free Trade Area, but rather we should be asking ourselves, what can we do as the traders and the drivers and the beneficiaries to make it a success? So I just close by encouraging all of the young people watching to know that this is your economy, this is our economy, and it will only be a success if we, the actors in the ecosystem, drive innovation and be relentless in our pursuit of transformation. So with that said, thank you very much, all of the panelists for this first scene-setting session. It's been very educational for me and hopefully everybody. But to close us out, we're going to go to our next polling question that Ashley is going to put on the screen for us all to respond to. And that's really going to be looking at getting your views about the sort of the top 3 regulatory ecosystem problems that you feel RegTech could solve. It's a multiple choice question. Grateful for your response to that. And while we're doing that, we will now transition to our second panel. It's called Show Me the Money, or maybe not. I think on the program it's called Investability and bringing the models to market. So thank you very much, panel one. We're now going to transition to panel two.
Doing business in Africa. You can't afford to be without Africa Investor.